You're one of the journalists that is polarizing, you could say. People really like you or they really don't like you.
I was a nerd. I was on science clubs, math teams, like debate club, like all the most awful things that you could ever do to ever attract a female partner. You got Thad Jean, 28 years old, 10-0. Listen, the kind of thing he did in his run, bro, like this is what you tune in for. When I see people talking about PFL fighters that are either their favorite or the ones that their fights that they care about, like Dakota is at the top of that list more often than not.
Hello everybody and welcome to Between Rounds, presented by Gorilla Energy. I'm Dan Hardy and I'm joined this episode by Luke Thomas. Like, how many times have we spoken? I don't think I've ever interviewed you.
Oh, that's a good question.
Right.
A couple dozen or something?
Yeah.
I don't know, a long time.
We had that fun time on the stage in London a little while ago,
Yeah, February of 2023.
Yeah, that was good, Did you enjoy that?
I had one of the great times of my career, honestly. I didn't know what to expect. Didn't know what the UK fans were going to be like, know, but they were as friendly as you could possibly be. And they were raucous, and the English don't need a lot of prodding to be a good crowd, do they?
That's very true. That's very true. What's it like being an MMA journalist as you travel in the world? You're one of the most recognizable journalists in mixed martial arts, and you're one of the journalists that is polarizing, you could say. People really like you or they really don't like you, and I'm the same. I have the same reactions from people as well. But like you have owned that in recent years. You are like, this is who I am. This is what I think, and your perspectives on mixed martial arts, I think, are very, very interesting. At what point did you think this is the direction I'm going in now?
It occurred to me very early that I had a lot of views about any number of different things, not merely related to fights, but to maybe like regulation or how the industry functions, that were not in concert or in lockstep with the industry itself. Mm-hmm. And that used to be quirkier, and now it's sort of like all defining. That's a conscious choice. People don't seem to realize that it's a conscious choice. I just think that's where media is going. It's just a couple of different paths you can choose. And the path that I chose, there's downsides to it, but the path that I chose, at least in theory, gives me maximum leverage to have an honest conversation with the audience. And I think that's all you really can do. I'm not saying that other paths where those kinds of things are restricted don't have value. They absolutely can. But I don't think that's a right fit for me. And so at some point I just kind of realized I can either pretend to be somebody that I'm not and fit in, or I can, it's going to cause friction, but at least I can have the satisfaction of feeling like I had at least an opportunity to say what I wanted to say.
Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously over the last few years, the sport's changed a tremendous amount. Can you take me back to the point where maybe MMA came onto your radar, when you started to think, man, I'm going to pay a lot more attention to this?
Like most of the people of my generation, everyone has a different version of the same story, which is, I didn't even know this was going to be anything, and then it became something, right? I'm old enough to be able to say something like that. The basic idea is that we're here in Washington, D.C. This is my hometown. I grew up here my parents eventually got divorced and I moved away, but many of my formative years were here, and I was bored here one summer, and a family friend came over and showed me, I think it was the summer of '94, what was available on UFC up to that point, and it was just one of these like revelatory things. Did a very small amount of training. I was in the Marine Corps Reserves from 1998 to 2004. But really, it's after I got out of there, and I was just kind of, I had kept up with a little bit after college, which was in 2002. Long story short, I'm just trying to say that it was never off my radar, but it came back when I was just looking for something to do, and then I saw an advertisement for a gym that was nearby where I was living at the time, and it was great. And I got into media just because it didn't really exist. I was just, podcasting was itself new.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm just going to have fun with this and, work my Joe job at the same time. And then eventually Brock Lesnar fought, and when he fought Frank Mir. And I remember checking my traffic that night, and it was so enormous relative to what I had been experiencing. I was like, this you can do something with this,
What were you like as a young man, as a kid? Were there sports you were into? Did you do any kind of martial arts? Were you drawn to martial arts in any kind of way through movies or whatever?
Yeah.
Or was it like mid-90s, it fell onto your radar?
It fell onto my radar at age, I think, 14 or 15,
Right.
around that time. No, I was a nerd. No, but super. And I know people say that, and they're like, you know, there's sort of a generic way for being not standing out. No, I'm telling you, I was a nerd. I was on science clubs, math teams, you know, like debate club, like all the most awful things that you could ever do to ever attract a female partner. But right around that time where I began to watch, or at least become aware of UFC, I also just began to lift weights a little bit. And that just changes your whole perspective at age like 16, 17. But I didn't play any sports at all in high school. I was exclusively focused on the books, nothing else. And it wasn't until I decided to join the Marine Corps when I was 17, I didn't obviously be able to go over until I was 18, that, you know, you begin to sort of discover your physical self. And then that led to a journey of training after I got out, and I did that for about 9 years or so in various different things. And you know, all of that has been a part of my journey. I don't do it anymore. I can barely get out of fucking bed, bro. but kudos to those who can be our age and keep it up. If you want to have happiness for life, there's a pathway.
Yeah, for sure. Were there any fighters that stuck out to you? Was there anyone that made a particular? Obviously, Brock Lesnar made an impact on your statistics, but on you individually.
Even to this day, and I know that obviously his story has taken an unfortunate turn. But, dude, if I was 24 or 25 when The Ultimate Fighter hit, and I had already known about him before, but you know, right around this time, BJ Penn is still doing like insane shit, and then he kept doing insane shit, and not without a few bumps in the road, even during his, you know, very competitive years. But dude, BJ Penn was like, it is so hard to explain this to people. He was wildly ahead of his time, even in ways.
Just thinking about it, yeah.
Even in ways we can't even. At the time, we didn't even recognize. I mean, the guy was hitting octopus guard on Matt Hughes, and but for the fact that he tore his rib doing it, he was gonna win that fight too. After surprising him by going up to welterweight and smashing him in the first round. BJ Penn is to me. I've seen guys, like, obviously you look at a guy like, you know, Islam or something, and he's just special. He's a special fighter, and he has more skills head to head than BJ did. But the kind of person BJ was, to be able to accumulate all the available data about what fighting was and then to advance it, I don't know too many guys who've ever done something like that, dude. He is the standard of excellence for me.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I actually just got a BJ Penn signed trading card as well. It's precious to me because he was one of my heroes as well. You know,
it's heartbreaking, dude. I mean, you can edit this part out. You guys can keep it. It's up to you.
Also,
but
it is.
It's for any number of reasons. Just one, because we don't want to see BJ suffer, and or those around him suffer. And then I think the other part is, this is a more ordinary thing that happens to all fighters, but that the current generation just doesn't know of him at all in this turn.
Yeah.
If you would have told me, you know, I don't know, when he beat like Diego Sanchez, when he was working with the Marinovich brothers, for example, if you had told me at that time, you know, we would be having this kind of conversation, you know, in 2026, what?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But, well, what's interesting, obviously I've been doing this show for a while now, and almost always I'm sat with someone that has joined MMA at a much later time. This is probably the first time I've sat with someone that has got the same kind of MMA memories that I have, you know, the rise of the sport, the rise and fall of promotions, you know, along the way. And that's kind of something I wanted to talk to you about, because one of the interesting struggles for me is everyone sees the UFC as what it is, you know, dominating the sport, but they don't understand how important the PFL, One Championship, even Karate Combat and all those kind of things are. Like, in your experience of the sport, the rises and falls of these organizations, what are people doing right and wrong with the organizations? Why are some failing and falling apart and others thriving?
That's a tough one.
But you're the right person to answer it, though.
Well, the answer's maybe, maybe not. There's no way to answer that question. The answer is slightly different over time, you know. First of all, like my job is to remain neutral, so I appreciate this invite, but I will be I will be honest in
Of
this
course.
conversation. You would expect no less, right?
I would expect nothing less from you.
I can never just be pleasant. I have to introduce a degree of being unpleasant into the world to make myself felt, I suppose. Okay, so the problem today is quite difficult to solve. In short, it is not clear to me that competition as such to them is even legitimately possible, right? They have control of what the public perceives through this, what you can call basically championship, used to be called pay-per-view, but numbered event quality guys. They have all the ones that the public recognizes. That is not to say that they have all of the best fighters, although they do have very, very many of them, but that confers business and market legitimacy in ways that seem invisible but are quite real. And it's why they don't co-promote, because if they were to co-promote, there would be a way to cross-pollinate the rosters, and then the question of who are the actual dominant fighters, this begins to change. Not just that, if there was freedom of movement, you would watch a more multipolar world develop.
Yes.
Right, so because these business constraints exist, these dynamics exist. But I think if we're talking about like ways to stand out or succeed, obviously at a sort of generic analytical level, there has to be some kind of product differentiation, right? There has to be, like when I watch this, I get one kind, like you think of, it doesn't have to be, I don't mean it in the talent level as such, but that here in America, for example, college football is a gigantic industry.
Yeah.
But like, dude, if you watch those games, those guys, dude, they're better athletes than certainly me. But like relative to what is the NFL standard, most of those guys are nothing, and that's crazy to think about. But so it's a different level of the game,
Yeah.
but yet they're still very, very popular because there's a fundamentally different appeal. I realize that there is a hierarchy in that example. I'm just trying to say, like, things that have stood out are ones that had a real brand identity, and that the fans knew, I have to go to that to get that.
Yes.
It's not replicable elsewhere. I would also just say, though, very quickly, if I may, I know there's some recording time constraints, but to me, this is something that has been lost a little bit. You know as well as I do that there were a million shows that were fly-by-night and or predatory and or, you name it. But one thing that has been lost is MMA used to have a universe where there was a collection of these kinds of shows floating around, and some were very weird and some didn't work, but there was an experimental, iterative process happening all the time, and sometimes you got a little bit of magic. And some of the bigger brands there were able to carve out a special identity, and that is lost, like I think, or at least to that extent anyway. And I think that's one thing that, I don't know how, I don't even know if something like that is achievable anymore, but I do think it was, for all its complications, it was nice to live in an industry where people were allowed to experiment and try and just fail, but try. I would like to see more of that if possible.
Yeah. So what are the fighters that come to mind outside of the UFC roster? Where are the elite fighters that aren't signed to the UFC right now? I mean, we've got a bunch. I often say our middleweight division is probably one of the most competitive with the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, you got to start with a guy like Johnny Eblen, right? I mean, I realize,
Absolutely.
I guess technically he's not champion, so no disrespect to Castelo Vancinas, who of course has a win over him and looked amazing in his return to Spain. But just as he's got, just from a PR perspective, working with Sean Strickland and what Sean Strickland does to introduce him to a wider audience, his own audience, there's just, that's a huge boost, obviously, reputationally, visibly, social media-wise. But yes, so the middleweight division, it's kind of funny, like, obviously we're here in DC, I think I always try to think about, like, who are guys that just bring a little bit of electricity to the show. Because again, there's just so many guys, and fights can sometimes, and anywhere you look, just kind of blend together at certain points. Who's like standing out? You got Thad Jean, 28 years old, 10-0. Listen, as of the time of this recording, I don't know. He's fighting a tough guy this weekend. I don't know if he's going to win, but the kind of thing he did in his run, ultimately culminating in beating Logan Storley, bro, like, this is what you tune in for. Like, that is the thing that is. I always say tell people this, like, and I'm not. I want to be very clear. I'm using these two examples as merely a way to think about it, not as one-to-one comparisons. But people make the mistake of thinking that a fighter's title campaign is their most exciting. And to be clear, they're usually the biggest, and they're usually the ones you remember the most. But I would submit to you, just from a pure entertainment standpoint, I had a little bit more fun with Georges St. Pierre's rise than I did his maintenance. And if you don't catch a guy on the way up, you'll kind of miss the fact that the ones who are really good, and we'll see if that is that guy, but the ones who are really good, dude, like on their way up, that is a fun ass time to get involved. I remember Khabib's rise, just mowing through. Dude, I remember John Jones beat Andre Gusmao, who had come over from IFL. Gusmao had all the hype. John Jones was just a guy that they threw in there, and all of a sudden you're like, dude, Andre Gusmao lost? And then he takes Stephan Bonner and he's giving him frequent flyer miles. Like, this is the time where it pays to be plugged in and to watch a fighter rise. If a guy like Thaddeus can do it, it could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a very interesting take. It's like, so I agree with you with GSP. Like, he was, like, him coming up, like, I fought him after the John Fitch and Thiago Alves fights, where he was just like, I mean, he was an assassin in those fights. And I got a version that was almost like affected by the Matt Serra knockout, where it was I didn't take any damage in that fight.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Other than the attempted subs, right?
Well, yeah, but like I would have rather him beat the hell out of me. You know what I mean? I
don't know what you mean.
Well, it's just like I kind of watched the John Fitch fight, and I'm like, I'm a little bit jealous that they got that version of GSP. You know. Whereas then on the other side, you've got Kamaru Usman, who for me was relatively kind of mediocre on the way up to his title shot, but intentionally so, like, I'm just going to give you 60% effort and you're going to like it. And then he started to defend his belt and was starching people with his hands after working with Whitman. Like, it's interesting how some fighters, they kind of find themselves when they get the belt. And like you mentioned Johnny Eblen, and I think everybody in the room would agree with me, the version of Johnny Eblen that we've had since he lost to Costello is just so much better.
He's fighting mean.
Yeah, and he's enjoying himself.
Yes, like there's just a level of. I mean, he was always a workhorse. There's really not a question about that. But now it's like, some of the ground and pound just has a little bit more steam on it. And again, he often led the dance offensively. But to your point, exactly, it just feels like he's got, dude, this is another one too, revenge tours are also fucking sweet. When guys have like a real Count of Monte Cristo vibe, like I'm just coming to just saw off heads. That's a fun time too, and I think Eblen's starting to give off a little bit of that, on the way to which, by the way, I'll say this too, another thing that's kind of important is rivalries. Rivalries are important for fighters, for organizations, for fans, for memories, like more of those, real ones though, of course, not the silly ones.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, when it's real, you can tell. I mean, we've been around it long enough. You can kind of feel when it's a performance, can't you? So here's a question for you. Then we're heading up to Elmont, New York after this. We've got Usman Nurmagomedov defending his belt against Archie Colgan, 2 undefeated fighters there. Where do you think Usman stands in the lightweight division worldwide? And do you think Archie is going to be able to wrestle the belt from his hands?
Okay, this is going to sound crazy. Usman Nurmagomedov is simultaneously much more difficult to beat than people think, and then on some level much easier. Okay, so I know that sounds weird. Here's kind of what I mean. If you actually look at the Nurmagomedovs, and we're comparing across eras and weight classes, so this is a very perilous analytical way to approach this. But in my opinion, Umar Nurmagomedov and Usman Nurmagomedov are as well-rounded as you could reasonably ask any fighter of that level of experience to be, and they are exceedingly difficult to beat. But if there is a clear just fact of the way that they fight, they have difficulty now, not through the course of their career, so you can find examples to the contrary in the resume, but I'm saying what they're showing more and more recently, both of them have they're not able to hurt their opponent as much as they need to affect change, either to lead to a finish itself or fight-ending scenarios, or just making them move under the weight of damage, not the weight. I mean, again, of course there is some. I mean, it'd be silly to suggest it's not, but it's not enough to affect change, which is why it's leading to a lot of decisions. That, and of course, someone's going to say they're also fighting really tough guys. Of course. But relative to, and again, they're different games for different eras, but relative to the kind of punishment that defined Khabib's game, I mean, a big part of how he made you engage with offensive dilemmas was just pure punishment. And it was also passing, and it was sub threats. And dude, Khabib's game was rough on you. They're not as rough as I believe they need to be. And I think, so I'm trying to answer this question, where does he belong? I think he can win inside the top 5, but I think as long as hurting a guy remains a challenge for him, that's eventually going to cost him. I'm not saying by a vicious KO or 10 losses. I'm saying at some point, at a critical juncture, this is an offense-first sport. Defense is, you can get guys like Sean Strickland who could turn defense into an art form. That's very, very special, but that's not the way the sport works. That's why they stand out. They're the exception that proves the rule.
Yeah.
And if your offense leads you to against elite guys, and that's your class of guys you're fighting, and you have difficulty putting them away because you rely too much on control positions, this will cost you. At some point or another, you're going to have a bad night because of that.
So do you think there's an opportunity then over 5 rounds for Archie Colgan to do some damage to Usman that could change the complexion of the fight? Or do you think he's not got the experience quite yet?
That's the other part too, dude. Like Usman is, he's got a ton of rounds under his belt. He's gone, I mean, was it 10 rounds with Paul Hughes?
Yep.
I was trying to think for a second, was the first one a non-title? That alone is an insane run, to say nothing of everything else he did. And he had a good run in Bellator too. I just think you have to really, the question that Colgan or anyone else has to ask themselves is, this is true of any fight, but it's particularly true against a guy so well-rounded. And the other part about Usman too is he kind of knows, and I'm not saying hiding like, I don't mean that. I mean guys who know kind of where to park the car for 30 seconds in a fight because it's on their terms.
Yeah.
But they're not really offensively engaging, and it doesn't amount to stalling. He's got a million of those, right? So for me, if you're going to beat a guy like that, you have to be able to. You have to resist this. You have to have. And what is that? A great jab. You're tearing up his lead leg as he tries to offensively engage. He can't grab the single. Whatever your answer to that is, or he gets a hold of you and you've got a whole wrist peeling and grip peeling sequence to get up. That's on you. But that's the fundamental question. If he is able to, and I'll just put it in sort of simpler terms, if he is able to consistently make grips on you, you have a problem.
Yeah.
He cannot be allowed to be making grips on you, period. So that's how I look at it.
That makes sense. That makes sense. It's an interesting fight, just given the fact that they both try and occupy the same space, but Usman loves to fight on the outside. I mean, you watch the fights against Paul Hughes. This is actually his show, by the way. I don't know if you noticed, but
I didn't, but now I do. Shouts to Paul Hughes.
The thing with Paul Hughes, he was always trying to get into range on Usman, and Usman's very good at just kind of touching you with long range stuff. The challenge for Colgan is going to be trying to get close to him, but then, how does the wrestling fare against him? That's the question for me in that one. I think it's a fascinating one. And then co-main event, we've got Dakota coming back as well. Just kind of overall, tell me about Dakota. Like, kind of what your thoughts on her are. We've had great fighters in the female divisions, the likes of Shevchenko and Nunes, and obviously, we've got Kayla, and there's a lot Cyborg potentially with her last fight coming up. Where do you see Dakota in that group?
We spoke earlier of fighters who bring electricity to their fights. I mean, I should have mentioned her, to be honest. Apologies. I should have mentioned. No disrespect to Thad Jean, but just a very simple. Here's a very easy metric by which to measure this kind of thing. Like what, when I see people talking about PFL fighters that are either their favorite or the ones that their fights that they care about, like Dakota is at the top of that list more often than not. So deserves to be acknowledged there. And I think the reason for that is simple. Obviously youth is on her side, and that's certainly. I also think the game is the women's side of the game is kind of starved for like a young fighter who's got a real fan-friendly, electric style. And here she comes, just blasting people, and obviously more than that. I don't mean to say it, but I feel like her striking is what. And the way in which her fights have gone as a consequence, I think that's a big reason for her appeal. Yeah.
And where do you see her sitting in the division? I mean, obviously Shevchenko's at the top in the UFC.
So glad you asked.
Yeah, because for me, that's another one that blurs the lines for me. I would say that especially stylistically, with the fact that Shevchenko likes to be on the outside, I also wonder whether she's got the ability to blast through Dakota and get her to the floor in the same way that she has with other people.
Shevchenko, another one of those fighters who's got a million places to kind of park the car.
Yeah. Difficult to break down.
You have to beat her on so many more micro levels to do that, and that's just a really, really tough challenge. I'll say this. I'm so glad you asked me this, because I had a conversation with one of your staff members last night, and I was talking about, like, if I was to make a list of like PFL fights I want to see, I'm not the matchmaker here. I'm just a loudmouth. But
me too.
Yeah, fair enough. But you got to make Liz Carmouche versus Dakota Ditcheva if there's any kind of way, because both of them, first of all, like, dude, Liz Carmouche is such a beast. It's insane to me, her longevity, dude. I don't know if she's the best, flyweight in the world. I don't know that. But what I do know is you're gonna work for it if you're gonna beat her. I know that for sure. And more often than not, she's gonna pound through. Like, her level, the fighters like her are, to me, some of my favorites. She's not the only one. But when you're that good that late, yes, obviously she is a physical beast, and I think that plays a big role. But it's also maintenance, and what happened to you in fights, like, all of that speaks to her as well. But, like, dude, when someone is that good that late in the game, this is the clearest demonstration that person is a lifelong martial artist. This is just the way they live. It's just the way they live.
Yeah.
And because they've studied the books and they've lived it, and it's just part of their identity, they are able to have this kind of like Jim Miller. And Jim Miller is a student of martial arts. I want to just say MMA, but that's a guy committed to the learning of it. Those old monks we always see in the movies, who just, like, that's what they just did. I always, have you ever seen the documentary Jiro Dreams of Sushi?
No.
I've brought this up before. I don't know if this is an old ass dude thing to recommend. There's a documentary, I think it's on Netflix, or it was when I first saw it on Netflix. And it's this dude named Jiro who makes sushi in Tokyo. But the catch is, he makes it in a Tokyo subway station, yet he is a multi-time Michelin star winner. And they don't do, like, they serve very few things in very few ways at very few hours. And the guy who runs it is like 80 in the documentary, and he's still just hand making sushi every day. And they ask him, like, why are you still doing this? You could open up a big restaurant in Tokyo. You could make all the money in the world. You're famous in Tokyo for how good your sushi is. And he had reasons about, like, why the business didn't want to be that big, but he just basically said that, like, it's not just about wanting to be good at something. Like, being good at something means it's a thing that you do every day. It doesn't matter, like, however good you think you are. That's not the point. The point is to, like, forever. You must always seek it. You must always live it. You must always do it, and not in some kind of obligatory way, but, like, the way to truly get good at something and to love something and to understand every part of it. You have to just make that sushi every single day in the exact same way and perfecting the technique. And I feel like fighters like her, I would bring up Matt Brown as another guy. I feel like, who had longevity. And again, Jim Miller. There's so many you could name. I have such appreciation for that kind of a fighter, man, because yes, some guys can come in and they're the best guy in the gym and they have a good 10 years. Show me a good 20.
Yeah,
that's 100%. What I want to see.
Yeah, facts. I've been in Vegas recently training and working with Veronica Extreme Couture, and still on the mat, Mike Pyle, Jay Heron, Ray Sefo, still beating the brakes off all these younger guys. And Mike Pyle, for me, was one of my hardest sparring rounds back in the day.
Bro, everyone talks about Mike Pyle.
Just in the gym, he was just a killer. No one could touch him. And it's interesting to see these guys. They still, no competition on the horizon. They're too old to compete now. No interest, but they're still coming in and working on things. So let me ask you this then. Based on that documentary that you watched, what is something in your life that you say is your daily dedication?
Jesus. I could give a crude answer. I won't. Golly, how do I want to answer this? I will tell you what. How old are you?
44.
44. I'm just a little bit older. I'm 46. I will tell you what. A midlife crisis is a real thing.
Okay.
Like, for all the young dudes out there, it's like, oh, I'm going to skip mine. No, the fuck you're not. No, the fuck you're not. in part just because the world is so insane, like
Yes.
it's just changing in any number of ways. I have had to ask myself recently, for any number of different reasons, like who actually am I? What do I really like, and why do I like them? Do I like them for reasons of, inherited behavior, or I mean, what am I consciously choosing? And it has been a strange journey to answer. I'm getting somewhere with
No
this.
worries.
I'm getting somewhere with this. And so, if you would ask me this question 5 years ago, the answer would have just been the ability to enjoy martial arts and MMA, and to be able to talk about it with people, and just live a life of, live a life of just being able to indulge the things that you love, and how to be so fortunate, And I still think many of those things are true, but because of the insane nature of the world, I have had to do much deeping about that. And so I guess the answer would be, I don't know what I do as part of that as a daily habit anymore, other than like I really enjoy to read physical things,
Yeah.
a book, a newspaper, but I feel like my purpose about what I should be doing with my life is changing, and so I don't know how to answer your question, because you caught me on the half beat between where I've been and whatever it is, maybe ahead for me, and that moment in time has been a challenge of exploration.
That's interesting.
I don't know that it is. It's been.
Have you had one of these periods? Because I kind of feel like
I have questioned everything about my identity.
I have like in every 7 years things kind of take a big shift, and I feel
I've
like
had those.
Yeah.
Yes. That's not what I mean.
this is different.
What I mean is, why do I listen to the music that I listen to? Why is the certain kind of art that I gravitate to? Why is it that one? Do I really love the things that I say that I love? Why did I get tattoos? I have tattoos on my arm. You have a million of them too.
Mm-hmm.
Why did I do that? Did I do that for some kind of adolescent reason that's still lingering? Why did I? So like I'm like trying to inventory my own identity as a way to like understand exactly who the fuck I am. And that is ongoing.
Yes.
It is ongoing.
Well, I look forward to the next time we have a conversation then, because you may be a bit further along on that journey and have a bit more of a...
I certainly hope so. It's taken a while.
So normally we have a bowl right between these two Gorilla Energy drinks, but today, because obviously they're all questions that are from fighters to other fighters on the show.
I would
it's
not
gonna
be a good fit for that.
We just had a really good one from Impub, which would be, what would you say to yourself, before your first fight? Which, obviously in hindsight for a lot of these fighters, they would answer, but what would you say to yourself before you walked out for your first fight?
You know what? It's the same thing I say to my daughter when she tries to do tough things, One of the truest things I ever heard George St. Pierre say, and it's something I kind of intuitively have felt but never just listened to him articulate it. I mean this sincerely, because, fighters say a lot of crazy things that you would rather forget, but not in this case. And what he basically argued was, when I go through with these things, these fights, these walkouts, I let myself be scared. I am scared. It is a lot. It is, anything could go wrong. I'm sure as you all understand. And, just the pressure of what happens if it does go wrong. But he allows himself to feel that. But that is not the determinative factor of his action.
Yes.
He does it despite that. And it's something that when he said that, this is many, many years ago, that was like a light bulb moment for me. It's like, it's okay to be afraid, but it's not a reason not to do it, actually.
Yes.
And to then just steel yourself for the unknown. And I will tell you, that has brought me at various times since he said that, which a long time ago, that has brought me great comfort and great inspiration. And now as a dad, something I'm able to impart to my daughter. And I feel very good about that.
Yeah, it's interesting, those kind of things that stick with you. I mean, because obviously I fought George, but I also went and spent 3 training camps with him. And the person that he was very inspiring to me. Just a great martial artist, a lovely guy. He did my laundry for me while I was training. You know what I mean? Just generally a lovely guy. But it's that surface level of emotion that he feels, you know what I mean? Like he's afraid of aliens, he's fascinated by dinosaurs, you know what I mean? There's something very real and quantifiable about the human element of George St. Pierre, which you wouldn't see in his earlier days of fighting, I don't think, because he was very good at guarding it. And I feel like that kind of showed itself a little bit later in his career and made him a lot more relatable to people.
This is what I always try to tell people, not just fighters, but I think it's important for fighters. Like for me, and I know fighters are going to be like, oh, we don't care about my opinion on this, which is fine, they don't have to. But I'm just going to say, in my experience, if you don't watch tape, that's a red flag for me.
100%.
It's a red flag for me. You are going to limit your what you're possible for you, period. But there's another level beyond that. And some guys don't even have to because they're just like cold-eyed psychopaths. But the guys who can be, like, I'll give you another great example. A guy like Gilbert Burns.
Yep.
Gilbert Burns had to wrestle with a lot of existential questions about his ability, who he was, why he's lost, what it does to him. Like, he had to interrogate himself in that way, and he did it, and he did it in a healthy way. And you know, obviously, by the time he had some of his bigger fights, he was a little bit older. So like I interviewed him when he revealed some of these things to me prior to the Hamzat fight. But like, I was so impressed with the courage it takes. Dude, interrogating yourself is fucking frightening.
Terrifying.
If you actually do it, like really dig deep, it can be a very challenging experience. And so for guys who are willing to know that fear will greet them, but yet rationally try to engage with it, those are higher level thinkers, in my opinion. Those are guys who are willing to, like, what are the actual foundational things that make this work? Getting to that takes risk and honesty with oneself. Hard to find them in the general population, not just the fighters themselves.
Yeah, great observation. Right, so because I don't have a bowl, I have gone to social media.
Oh God!
And I know you love X, formerly Twitter.
Yeah, well, you know what? Everyone is so kind and not racist. That's my.
Well, I'm going to pick and choose.
I appreciate how progressive they are.
Well, I had a couple of really good questions. I mean, one of them is, I need tips on how to grow a luscious beard like his. So what are your beard tips?
Talk to your TRT doctor and fix your genetics.
There we go.
It's the reality. It's like, dude, like what I've kind of figured out over time. First of all, like mustaches are kind of like the thing now with young people, which fine. I have no issue with it. But like having been around dudes with like epic beards, like for example, seeing Kimbo Slice in person, you're like, it's like, dude, you kind of just, you know, either you got the juice or you don't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, good luck.
For sure. Well, I mean, here's another one. Brad Wharton, Cage Warriors commentator, play-by-play guy. How many regular MMA media members could you bench? I reckon you could bench quite a few. A lot of the media members I've seen are quite small compared to you.
Yeah, I don't think there's one I couldn't. They are delicate little creatures, aren't they? Yeah, I mean, I'm older now, so like I have to be careful with the bench now. I still do it, but I have to be careful with it. But have you had shoulder surgery?
No, I have. Honestly, I wish there was a bit of wood I could touch. I have had 5 stitches total.
You've never had a surgery?
I have never had a surgery. I've dislocated a lot of things, broken a bunch of things, but the only stitches I had was from my UFC debut against Gono, and he slapped me with an open palm, and the seam of the glove on the inside cut me. That's the only time I've been stitched.
Damn.
I don't know how I've done it. Genuinely, I don't.
That's insane.
It is crazy.
Even after the St. Pierre fight?
Nothing. Not a thing.
Holy fuck, dude.
Not a thing.
Okay, well, I didn't know I was talking to Wolverine.
I mean, my thumbs are in different positions from the Anthony Johnson fight.
Okay.
That's probably one of the only overlasting. My nose, my jaw aches from time to time. But all these are training injuries.
Yeah, I got wrist locked one time, and it hurt, but like I didn't. It was by the guy who was running the school, and it hurt, but like I didn't think anything of it. And then I wasn't lifting weights at the time, and then I went back to lifting weights. And dude, like anything over 55, my wrist was like, it was like, I was able to kind of work through it and re-strengthen it. But even to this day, if I'm on the heavier end of the range of what I can push, I have to wear wrist straps now. Like have to, yeah. But I was gonna say, I had shoulder surgery and I had to do it because I tore my labrum lifting weights. And it was so bad that my shoulder was literally falling out of its socket in my sleep.
Oh wow.
It was horrible. So I had to get it. Bro, your shit does not work the same after. Like, I don't know. I mean, I did aggressive PT. It's stable. What they do is they fix it from re-breaking.
Right.
But they don't give you capacity.
Yes.
You have to kind of just find whatever's left of that, you know?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know how lucky I've been. I mean, there've been so many fighters that.
What is
I mean,
the
even
fucking-
Stefan Struve, like, he was my generation. He's got all kinds of problems.
And also, I consider him a friend, Ryan Hall.
Yeah.
He's had a number, I don't know how many at this point, but he's had a number of surgeries.
Yeah.
From,
He's got a wild style, though. So,
no, I mean, I think
my-
he would, I think even he would probably tell you that the way in which he has developed a style carries additional orthopedic risk.
Yeah, for sure.
You know.
Yeah. Well, let's finish on this, because I got a really good question from Daniel Murphy. If you could go back in time, would you choose to cover MMA as a career?
Boy, that is a tough one.
That's why I wanted to leave it there. Because MMA's changed so much since you started in the sport.
Here is there is a much bigger problem even than that, because I've been lucky to do a lot of different things in my media career. I've been lucky to have very briefly a television show. I had for many years a national radio show. We did that podcasting thing in London together. Like, I've worked at some of the bigger websites. I mean, I've kind of done just about what's available to do. And the media industry broadly and MMA media specifically these have been decimated, totally decimated. And so I don't know how to disentangle the challenges with MMA just from the media side, which has absolutely, and I'm talking about how we get information and what that does to the market for it, and how that's impacted. Like, I'll just be honest with you, and I'm not trying to be, cast doom or wish ill into the world, far from it, but like, dude, there's a lot more contraction in MMA media coming, man. I'm just letting everyone know, and it may take a little while, a couple years, maybe more than that, but there's more on the way.
Yeah.
The economics make it impossible to look the other way. So that just, I mean, how do you answer, okay, but for that, sure,
Yeah.
And then MMA itself, I often ask myself, is the way in which MMA has gone, to what extent was any of this inevitable? Right? Is this the way that you run 1,000 permutations and 997 of them, they end up this way? And truly, no one knows the answer to that. But I don't think that it was. And I think that the major stakeholders in the sport have made some choices about what to do with it that, to me, have been irresponsible to the point of indefensible.
Yeah.
And what do you do with something you love that you can't control? Do you not love it anymore? Do you change the way you love it, or do you just love it all the same? These are choices that everyone has to make for themselves. I have wrestled with that. I do not know what the right answer is. I wish I could tell you. But MMA is such a lovely accident.
Yes, it is.
It's such a lovely accident, and I could never not see that. So if that doesn't answer the question because I dodged it like a piece of shit.
I think that's a really nice way of answering the question. I
Yeah.
think it's a nice way of finishing
These
it.
are difficult questions
Yeah,
to
they
answer,
are,
you
for
know?
sure
How
they
do you, like, I mean, dude, like, I understand something. I got into media, like, I started horsing around with it, like, basically 2007. We're talking about a completely different world.
Yeah.
How could anyone have seen, we'd end up where we're at in all the ways media has fundamentally just altered? Like, that alone makes it like, yeah, in that sense, I probably should have done something. I mean, people, it's funny. I get emails, people being like, yo, I'm studying journalism at so-and-so major. What's your best advice? And I'm like, change your fucking major, bro. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely the worst idea you could possibly have. And I say that as someone who was a philosophy major. Like, don't do that. Focus on, but you know what? The challenge to that view, and maybe we can end here, I'm sorry. The challenge to that view is you don't know which way the world's going to turn in any way. Who's to say any safe choice you make ends up lasting? We might have robots giving us orthopedic surgery in 20 years. I mean, that sounds fantastical, but you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
who the fuck knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? So, on some level, maybe just live your life as, do the things that make you happy. Yeah? How about that?
That sounds like a good place. And no matter what, there'll be someone in a subway in Tokyo making sushi just for the love of making sushi.
Just because that's the way they live.
I love it.
Yeah.
Luke, thank you so much for coming in. Ladies and gentlemen, Luke Thomas, always one of the best conversations you'll have in mixed martial arts, and just generally, anyway, a fascinating dude. This has been presented by Guerrilla Energy. I've been Dan Hardy. This has been Between Rounds, and we'll see you after the next one.